Today I'm going to be showing you how to use a clay oven for baking bread and cakes, and I'm not going to be explaining how to make it today, but hopefully I'll be able to make a video on how to make it another time. But today we're just going to be baking, and so the first step in preparing to bake is to build a fire inside the oven and let the fire keep burning for about 3 hours. So every 15 to 20 minutes I have to keep on coming and adding more firewood, and then after 3 hours we can clean it out and start baking. So right now we're in the midst of having the fire going. I've got my firewood here, and at the same time I also have a wooden door that covers the opening to the oven. And it's right here. I'm soaking it in water while I'm heating the oven so that when I put the door in front of the very hot oven it won't burn. So I'll keep it in water until it's time to start baking. So we're going to keep on adding the firewood and keeping the fire going, and then after 3 hours I'll show you how to clean it out and get started with baking. It has been 3 hours, and so all of the fire has died down just to coals. So I'm going to clean out the oven now, and I have this metallic slasher which I'm going to use to scoop them out, and I'm going to scoop them out into a wheelbarrow so that they don't burn the ground. And then I'm going to pull my door out of the water, and I have another tool. It's just a broom handle with some pieces of cotton cloth tied to the end, and I'll dip it into the water and then use it to clean off the last bit of ashes from the floor of the oven. And you have to make sure that your fabric is cotton so that it doesn't burn, and you put it in the water also so that it will not burn. But if you use something like polyester, then it would melt once it got into such a hot oven. So cotton cloth. So let's go ahead and do that next step. These coals are really hot, so it helps to have something to protect your hand as you scrape them out. Heat coming off of these coals is pretty intense. Alright, that's all of the biggest pieces. I'll go ahead and move this out of the way. Alright, so you can see most of the big coals are gone. And dip this into the water, and then use it to sweep out the ash. And the idea here is that if you can get the floor of the oven clean enough, then you can bake directly on it without having to use a pan. And keep rinsing it off. Okay, I don't see any real big bits on the floor of the oven, So we're gonna say that's good enough. I'm gonna start out, I've got an oven thermometer that I'm going to put inside there. Sorry about the rooster. So I'm going to put this inside, and I'm going to put some eggplants around the edge and close the door so that the temperature regulates, and then we'll start out with some pita bread. So there's the thermometer and the eggplants around the edges. Can't even stick my hand in there, it's so hot, but here's the door. So closing the oven up, I'm going to go grab my pita bread and we'll get started with baking that. There's the pita bread. We're going to go ahead and put it directly on the floor of the oven. So we'll remove the door. The temperature is 550 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm going to just put these directly inside. It's sticky. And it will only take a couple minutes to cook. Okay, it's been a couple of minutes. Let's check our pita bread. They're very done, so we'll take them out and put in some fresh ones. There's the first set of bread out of the oven, and the eggplant, and I've put the first pizza in, and so we'll go ahead and check on that in about 15 minutes. Alright, there's our first pizza. Looks great. Still at about 450 degrees. There are the two pizzas. There's the next loaf of bread. Temperature's like 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Now I've put in some scones or biscuits. There's the final product on the scones. Okay. So next we've got banana cake. Looks like it's done. Looks very done. So we have been baking for 3 hours so far, and the temperature is still just a little bit over 300 degrees Fahrenheit. So you could continue with baking other things that take a low temperature. This is called pavlova. I've never made it before, so we're going to see how it goes, especially in an outdoor oven. The oven is at 300 degrees Fahrenheit. I need to let it cool down to about 200 degrees for baking the pavlova, so I'm going to leave the door open until it cools down. But otherwise, I would be able to continue baking things that take a lower temperature. I've finished the pavlova, and I left the door open for a while to try to cool the oven down for baking that. So after 5 hours, the temperature is still a little bit above 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So if I wanted to cook something that took a really cool temperature, like granola, I could still do that at this point. You can also, if you have some firewood that's a little bit wet, you can dry it in the oven as it cools for the next time that you use the firewood. So in conclusion, if you're going to be baking using the clay oven, I used a wheelbarrow full of firewood in order to have the 3 hours of fire. And then I've been able to bake for about 5 hours. And depending on how well your door seals, you can bake for between 4 to 6 hours with that 3 hours of heating before you bake. And so I hope that you've enjoyed this video and that you get the opportunity to build an oven and use it yourself.